Use of trapezius muscles when crawling. The trapezius is one of the very first muscles that we humans use as babies. When a baby lies on its stomach, its first movement is to arch its back and lift its head using its trapezius muscles. Then, with its head up, the baby can turn its head and look around, using the sternocleidomastoid muscles. See, baby on stomach in the appendix. We need to look at that. We need that. That's all. Yes. The next step in the baby's development will be to lift its head high, enough to bring its arms under its shoulders to support the weight of its upper body. With this, the baby will soon be able to come up on all fours. In this position, tensing the fibres of the upper trapezius extends and arches the neck and lifts the head, and the face looks forward. See baby on all fours in the appendix. In order to do this, the baby tenses all the fibres of the three parts of the trapezius more or less equally. The baby arches its lower back with its lower trapezius, pulls the shoulders together with the middle trapezius, and lifts its head up, tips its back with the upper trapezius. In addition to the trapezius muscle, the head is held up and balanced on the vertebra of the neck, partly due to the action of the semi-spinalis capitis, the largest muscle in the posterior neck. Then, the sternocleidomastoid muscles can rotate the head quite easily. At this stage in its development, the baby supports its weight on its hands and knees and moves much like other four-legged mammals. After a short while, the baby can begin to crawl forward, moving first one arm forward and the other one back. This asymmetrical pattern of arm movement when crawling requires the trapezius muscles asymmetrically. Polarity therapy! Roly-poly is one of the best things going to get that whole torrential flow connection, which is the vagus left and right together. With the body supported on all fours, the arms and thighs are at a 90-degree angle to the trunk. As the baby pushes down with its arms, there is equal force pushing the arm back up into the socket of the shoulder joint. And the proprioceptive nerves in the shoulder joint can report to the brain that the arms and shoulders feel right and are in balance. Changes in trapezius use when going from crawling to standing. Human babies support their weight on all fours when they crawl. Human beings have the same physical structure as four-legged animals in terms of the muscles, bones, and nerves involved in this movement. We live in gravity, and gravity is always pulling us down. When we crawled on all fours, we distributed our weight more or less evenly on our four limbs, which held our weight by pushing up into our body. This is a stable structure. When we stood up to balance on our hind legs, we had to use our muscles and bones in a completely new way. Everything changed in the balance of tensions in our muscular and skeletal systems. Instead of a more or less even muscle tonus in the muscle fibres, some muscles became chronically tensed and others became flaccid. Instead of holding our weight on all four supports, we balance our heavy upper body entirely on the two ball and socket joints between the legs and hips when we stand, which is most unstable compared to a four-leg stance. Over decades, standing on our back legs can give rise to many problems that four-legged animals do not have. Common to most of us is an increase in our forward head posture. When we first came up to crawl on all fours, the trapezius muscle held our head up high. The three parts of the trapezius functioned like a single muscle in which all of the fibres had roughly the same tension. Some of the muscle fibres work to pull the shoulders back and together to support our upper spine, and other fibres pulling in other directions work to lift the head back and up. But when we stood up, parts of the trapezius muscle lost their integrity. They were no longer needed to pull our shoulders together in the back and tilt our head up as before. Rather than acting as a single muscle, these muscle fibres organise themselves into 3 functional units, now seen as the upper, middle and lower trapezius. And these 3 groups of fibres began to work as separate entities. One part, therefore, might be overly tense while another part is undertensed. This is reflected in the position of the bones, not only on the shoulder, but the spine as well. The spine of a human being has a much different form than that of a horse, a goat or a giraffe. A 4-legged animal supports part of its weight on its front legs, in contrast to a human being whose arms hang freely from the shoulder joint. There is no longer a pushing of the arms into the shoulder joint. If we have shoulder pain, we often ask ourselves, what did we do to create the pain? We must have lifted something heavy or thrown something, such as a baseball, which we were not used to doing. However, an unrecognised factor in the creation of imbalances leading to shoulder pain might be changes that have occurred because we are standing upright only on our legs. And there's no telling what a lifetime habit of sitting still on chairs does to our musculoskeletal structure. And it's not a surprise that many physical therapists report that the most common problems that they treat are shoulder problems. The human spine has weaknesses that lead to stiff necks, backaches and shoulder problems. When we stand up, the relationship between the head and the spine changes compared to when we are on all fours. In order to balance on our legs, the upper part of the trapezius is no longer positioned to hold the head up and back, and the head tends to slide forward. The middle part of the trapezius muscle no longer pulls the shoulder blades together toward the spine to make a stable base. Instead, for most of us, our shoulder blades glide down our back, forward and around to our sides. Compared with the deep-barreled chest of a 4-legged animal, our upper chest caves in, crushing our hearts, crushing our breath, and our belly hangs out. If an actor assumed this posture, he would be to portray a character who had lost a sense of self-esteem. When the lower part of the trapezius does not function as it used to when it was crawling on all fours, our spine shortens and our head moves into a forward position. These changes are not due to increased muscular tension, but rather to a general loss of a balanced tonus in the 3 parts of the trapezius muscle that used to hold our head up against the constant pull of gravity. To improve the function of the trapezius muscle, therefore, we need to improve the tonus of the muscle fibres in all 3 parts of the trapezius by stimulating the nerves to the muscle. We can do that with a simple movement that I call the twist and turn exercise. Unlike most other exercises, this exercise neither stretches nor strengthens the muscle. By tightening and releasing the muscle tension, it simply wakes up the nerves, innervating the trapezius muscle. Overly tense areas of the muscle can relax, while muscle tone increases in areas that need it. Thank you, that's very helpful for us. We'll explore that practically later. The power of neurodiversity, unleashing the advantages of your differently wired brain. Thomas Armstrong, PhD, author of 7 Kinds of Smart. Parents, teachers and policymakers should all read this thought-provoking book. I loved it. It's Temple Grandin, she's great. She does the film about the autistic people who just desperately want connection but can't have it because of the energy. But they crushing themselves in one of those cow cattle metal things, you know what we talk about. Author of Thinking in Pictures. Yes, that's good. We need thinking in pictures. We get home we learn, teach ourselves the way we know how. Neurodiversity, a new term that changes the way we think about neurological disorders. Neurodiversity, the right word at the right time to account for recent evidence from brain science. Evolutionary psychology and other fields suggesting that we pay close attention to the bright spots of promise and possibility appearing in people who are differently wired. We pay close attention to the bright spots of promise and possibility appearing in people who are differently wired. Celebrated educator and psychologist Thomas Armstrong offers a revolutionary, inspiring guide illuminating critical information such as what recent research says about the specific strengths found in people with dyslexia, ADHD, autism and other mental health diagnoses. How to construct the ideal environmental niche for a neurodiverse person. How to take advantage of assistive technologies and what's to come in the future. Which career paths emphasise the gifts of a neurodiverse adults. And why inclusive classrooms offer the best learning experience for neurodiverse children. A passionate, compassionate, and compassion is a state of constant giving of self for others. A passionate, compassionate, and practical look at the myriad strengths of anyone who is differently abled. The power of neurodiversity is essential reading for parents, educators, mental health professionals, and anyone intrigued by how our brains work and what secrets they hold. A major work, revolutionary and humane, drawing on the latest scientific evidence. Dr. Armstrong argues convincingly that the disease-based model needs to be replaced by an understanding of brain differences that characterise neuropsychological conditions. This book could not be much more timely. Where are we going to open this one then? 66! Yeah, that's where we live. You get back to the healing lounge of 66. Not long now. Early in life, as possible, to relate to other people. There are a number of adaptive early intervention models that have been used to accomplish this aim. The most famous and widespread method being applied behaviour analysis. In ABBA, parents and teachers identify specific behaviours to be modified and then use explicit rewards, such as candies, toys and praise, to reinforce positive and social behaviours like language communication or appropriate social interaction, while ignoring or even extinguishing negative behaviours such as rocking and hand flapping and finger flicking. The advantage of this approach is that specific behaviours can be charted over a period of time and clear progress can be documented. The downside of this approach is its artificiality. Children behave appropriately mainly to get rewards, and its externally controlling aspects. The adult is the almighty dispenser of reinforcements, and boy do they not know how much damage they do. The flicking, the flapping, the stimming, it's like the rattles, it clears the energy. If you suppress the innate body healing of movement or sound or whatever it is that's been expressed, the freedom of expression in that moment, which is great here, but I can do my freedom of expression elsewhere, I don't need to do it here. It's been great to tap into my voice, but let us out of here, please. Let your children sound, let them move, let them flick, let them do what they want, because that is making them feel better. Just because you do not understand does not mean they have to stop. Difference is great, unique is great, we need to shine our passion within. Art is just art and creation, passion. Protecting their special interests. There are many other treatment alternatives for autism available. For the purposes of this book, however, I'd like to focus on strategies that build on principle number 6. You do like the 6. Success in life also depends on modifying your surrounding environment to fit the needs of your unique brain. Niche construction. In other words, how can we help autistic persons and their caregivers construct niches that acknowledge who they really are, and that includes their strengths and abilities? And after this experience, we have lived both sides. Both sides. And for everyone's highest goods, and with everyone's comfortable boundaries, whatever, we will make ourselves heard somehow. Shwa. One approach that seems to me to be more developmentally appropriate than ABBA, and a good example of niche construction, is the floor time model developed by child psychiatrist Stanley Greenspan and psychologist Serena Vida. It is based on the idea that parents should pay attention to cues from their autistic children and set up naturally occurring scenarios of involvement where the child is encouraged to emotionally interact, solve problems, express needs, and in other ways move out into a meaningful engagement with the social world. This approach is more natural because it begins with the child, not with the adult attempts to force interaction through external reinforcements. There's a lot of emphasis in floor time on laughing, playing, and having a good time. Because when you're present in the moment, in the now in Snowflake's bed, it's about empowerment, self-play and fun. Whatever it is you need in that moment to make you feel better. Don't follow anyone else's rules. Just keep doing what you're doing. Live in your heart because you know what's best for you. Especially when it's been 39 years of knowing what's wrong. Can't get much better at knowing what's right when that's the case, can ya? Shh. No. This approach is more natural because it begins with the child, not with the adult. Attempts to force interaction through external reinforcements. There's a lot of emphasis in floor time on laughing, playing, and having a good time. Essentially creating a positive social and emotional niche for the child. Greenspan writes, to facilitate engagement and relating, observe what kinds of interactions, silly sounds, kisses, tickles, or favourite games bring the baby or child pleasure. Peekaboo! And hide the toy under the box. Are visual games that delight most babies. And rhythmic clapping games like patty cake will especially intrigue babies with audio strengths. Rhythm has your 2 hits moving, rhythm has your 2 hits, rhythm has your 2 hits moving, rhythm has your 2 hits moving. Moving trucks delight toddlers, and imaginative dramas bring joy to most preschoolers. Tune into the baby's or the child's rhythms, to his emotions and how he uses his senses and movements. These playful interactions are most helpful when done, according to Greenspan and Vida, for the least 15 to 20 minutes several times a day, when the child is most alert and available. A report on autism from the National Research Council suggests that the floor time model is effective in developing basic capacities for thinking, communicating and relating, and helps children use these skills in a wide range of natural situations. The floor time model succeeds because it focuses on the positive behaviours of the child. Paying attention to the special interests of children on the autistic spectrum is, in fact, an excellent way of promoting niche construction. The co-discoverer of autism, Hans Asperger, in reflecting on his own patients, observed a special interest enables them to achieve quite extraordinary levels of performance in certain areas. Educator Stephen Shaw's parents, for example, were given the diagnosis of autism when he lost speech as a toddler and withdrew from his surroundings. Instead of institutionalising him, as was common at that time, they turned their efforts toward focusing on his specific strengths and interests. They played music. They helped him mount his collection of seashells. Seashells on the seashore. Encouraged his interest in astronomy and provided him with plenty of reading materials. They don't even have a Pooh Bell in here. Today, he has a doctoral degree, but I think that's because we were on section 2, but we're down to section 1 now. 11 o'clock. Today, he has a doctoral degree, runs an educational consulting business, and is the author of 2 books. This is just one example showing that even if a child seems to be low functioning, a label that can itself have a negative impact on a child's prospects for the future. Whatever interests him can be used as a starting point. As one mother of an autistic child put it, does it matter that your 3-year-old finds flags the coolest thing on earth? No. Does it matter your 2-year-old is attracted to soup cans? No. It does not matter what it is. You can build off these interests and bring in other topics, ideas, and see where it takes your child. The parents of Justin Canha discovered this when they observed how this unresponsive, non-verbal child would just stare at the television screen, even when there was nothing on it except snow. They drew simple pictures regarding how to play soccer, how to follow basic safety rules, and how to get in bed at night. Then they videotaped these still pictures with a voiceover and played them on the television screen. Suddenly he began to respond. Now he works as an artist, exhibiting and selling his drawings at an art gallery in New York. As children grow older, their special interests can serve as a means of helping to negotiate their difficult relationships with others. One study of interests among students aged 7 to 21 with Asperger's syndrome, for example, revealed that as they shared their special interests with others, their self-esteem, their body language, and communication skills improved, while their self-stimulation and distraction decreased. At times, this also meant modulating their excitement level based on the attention that others showed to their interests. One student, for example, realised that not everyone was as passionate about their aeroplanes as he was. Well, if they're not really interested, I really don't talk about planes at all. But then he explained, first, I usually don't talk about it. And if I have a really good friend, they might come over to my house, and then they'll see all these planes around, and they'll tell me that planes are a really cool thing. And then I'll know. The authors of the study concluded, to truly know a child or youth with AS, Asperger's syndrome, one must know his or her SIA, special interest area. It is not enough just to acknowledge that interests are important to children and youth with AS. These children's interests define who they are. Interests represent safety, boundaries, and a measure of control. To punish the child by removing the cherished, in the Sandcourse, word, new beginnings, cherished, 2 words. To punish the child by removing the cherished interest is, in essence, to strip the child of him or herself and his or her source of comfort, soothing and strength. Go home. Interests are more than hobbies or pastimes. Interests help them make sense of the world. Part 3, John Livingston Seagull. Jonathan circled slowly over the far cliffs, watching. This rough young Fletcher gull was very nearly a perfect flight student. He was strong and light and quick in the air. But far and away, more important, He had a blazing drive to learn to fly. Here he came this minute, a blurred grey shape roaring out of a dive, flashing 150 miles per hour past his instructor. He pulled abruptly into another try at a 16-point vertical slow roll, calling the points out loud. 8, 9, 10. See, Jonathan, I'm running out of airspeed. 11. I want good sharp stops like yours. 12. But blast it, I just can't make 13. These last 3 points, without 40, arc. Fletcher's whipstall at the top was all the worse for his rage and fury at failing. He fell backward, tumbled, slammed savagely into an inverted spin, and recovered last, panting 100 feet below his instructor's level. You're wasting your time with me, Jonathan. I'm too dumb. I'm too stupid. I try, but I'll never get it. Jonathan Seagull looked down at him and nodded. You'll certainly never get it as long as you make that pull-up. Jonathan Seagull looked down at him and nodded. You'll certainly never get it as long as you make that pull-up so hard. Fletcher, you lost 40 miles an hour in the entry. You have to be smooth. Firm, but smooth. Remember? He dropped down to the level of the younger girl. Let's try it together now, in formation. And pay attention to that pull-up. It's smooth, easy entry. By the end of the 3 months, Jonathan had 6 other students, outcasts, all yet curious, about the strange new idea of flight for the joy of flying. Still, it was easier for them to practice high performance than it was to understand the reason behind it. Each of us, in truth, an idea of the great gull, an unlimited idea of freedom. Jonathan would say in the evenings on the beach, and precision flying is a step towards to put aside. That's why all this high-speed practice and low-speed and aerobatics. And his students would be asleep, exhausted from the day's flying. They liked the practice because it was fast and exciting, and it fed a hunger for learning that grew with every lesson. But not one of them, not even Fletcher Lind, Gull, had come to believe that the flight of ideas could possibly be as real as the flight of wind and feather. Your whole body, from wingtip to wingtip, Jonathan would say, other times, is nothing more than your thought itself, in a form you can see. Break the chains of your thoughts, and you break the chains of your body too. But no matter how he said it, it sounded like pleasant fiction, and they needed more to sleep. It was only a month later that Jonathan said the time had come to return to the flock. We're not ready! We're not ready! We're not ready! Said Henry Calvin Gull. We're not welcome. We're outcast. We can't force ourselves to go where we're not welcome, can we? We're free to go where we wish, dear one, and to be what we are, Jonathan answered, and he lifted from the sand and turned east toward the home grounds of the flock. There was brief anguish among his students, for it is the law of the flock that an outcast never returns, and the law had not been broken once in 10,000 years. The law said, Jonathan said go, and by now he was a mile across the water. If they waited much more longer, he would reach a hostile flock alone. Well, we don't have to obey the law if we're not a part of the flock, do we? Do we? Do we? We do? No. Fletcher said, rather self-consciously. Besides, if there's a fight, we'll be a lot more help there than here. And so they flew. They flew in form, the rest that morning. 8 of them in a double diamond formation, wingtips almost overlapping. They came across the flock's council beach at 135 miles per hour. Jonathan in the lead, Fletcher smoothly at his right wing, Henry Calvin struggling gamely at his left. And then the whole formation rolled slowly to the right, as one bird, level, 2 inverted 2, level, the wind whipping over them all. The squawks, the grockles of everyday life in their flock were cut off as though the formation were a giant knife. And 8,000 gulls' eyes watched without a single blink, one by one, Each of the 8 birds pulled sharply upward into the full loop and flew all the way around to the dead slow stand-up, landing on sand. And then, as though this sort of thing happened every day, Jonathan Seagull began his critique of the flight. Urban shaman, urban shaman, urban shaman. Exploring the power of thought. If the world is what you think it is, then you ought to be able to change your world by changing your thought. Sit up comfortably, with your eyes open wide, and turn your head as far as you can to the left and look straight ahead. Find something in your line of sight. Are you doing it? Are you doing it? Are you doing it? That you can remember as a marker and bring your head forward again. Now close your eyes. Keep your head still and imagine. Imagine that you are slowly turning your head to the left, very easily and loosely, without any strain. Way past the marker until you're looking directly behind you, without any problem at all. Imagine the sensation and the feeling, as well as the sight. Then imagine bringing your head slowly back to the front. Now open your eyes and turn your head physically to the left. To the degree you were able to imagine the feeling in your mind, you will now find that your head moves easily farther than it did before, and your line of sight is well past the marker. What you just did was change your body by changing your mind. You imagined being able to do something different, and your body responded to your thought. By changing what was possible only moments before, it's simple demonstration, full of powerful implications. The second principle, Kala, there are no limits. At first glance, this seems absurd, because we can experience limitations all around us. Our bodies can only grow so much. We can only see so far. We can only hear within a certain range. We can only live so long without breathing. The earth is only so big, and we have only so much money in the bank. No limits? Huh. Yes, no limits. The universe is infinite, as it would have to be if the world is what we think it is, and it's all a dream. How, then, to explain the limitations we experience? One way is to recognise 2 kinds of limitations, creative and filtered. An infinite universe implies infinite experience, which is the same as no experience, because there wouldn't be any differentiation, contrast, or sensation of change. The concept of creative limitation assumes the purposeful establishment of limits within an infinite universe in order to create particular experiences. 11 o'clock soon. We're going to get ourselves out of here. See you soon, guys. See you soon, guys. Love you. Namaste. Ring. Hi, Wendy. Phil Australia. Thank you. Feeling your love, guys. Feeling your love, guys. We're going to go do this, guys. Bye.